Hello, I'm Lindsey Fandozzi from Source One Management Services, and welcome to Part 1 of Marketing Procurement's Value Internally. Source One was founded about 20 years ago. We're based out of Willow Grove, Pennsylvania, and have a staff of about 40 strategic sourcing specialists on hand. Our capabilities include strategic sourcing, cost reduction, and we're the decision support team for our clients. We've saved over $1 billion in hard dollar cost savings and average about 18% savings across multiple categories. We have subject matter experts in over 100 different spend categories and have serviced over 500 companies. We also have a blog, The Strategic Sourcer. We have a free e-commerce tool, yabe.com, and we also wrote the book on managing indirect spend. In this picture, we see then Apple CEO Steve Jobs with his CPO Tim Cook. There's something readily apparent with Apple's relationship with its procurement group here. Tim Cook, as you see, is the head of procurement and literally is the CEO's right-hand man. If you look at Apple's history, sourcing and supply chain have been involved in all aspects of corporate decision-making, practically since the company began its resurgence in the early 2000s. But in many cases, this type of interaction with supply chain hasn't happened yet today, and I'd like to talk to you about some of those challenges and how we can address them. The story of Tim Cook demonstrates that supply management and creating value influences not only others to think differently, but it influences companies' decisions as an organization. Supply management led Apple to success. Cook found more cost-effective shipping methods to get product to the consumer sooner. He developed strategic relationships with key suppliers. Years ago, an Apple product would be introduced and then made available in a few months. Now, Apple demonstrates product and then it's available a few days after it is introduced. Let's take a brief look at the progression of the supply chain industry. The reason for the industry's developments are numerous: globalization, modern bookkeeping, recent financial crisis. All of these things really have led for the need for more strategic minds in thinking of fairly new concepts in this industry. The first era of sourcing and supply chain is the reactive buying era. This era saw a limited use of purchasing strategies overall. If any sort of strategy was used, it was within the procurement of raw and direct materials. Here, the purchasing needs of other departments were overseen by the stakeholders and department heads. The second era, the sourcing era. During this time, organizations developed sourcing groups, unleashing the personnel that first developed and implemented these advanced sourcing strategies on spend categories throughout their company. Purchasing departments that weren't skilled in these advanced tactics soon set about to learn them, and strategic sourcing departments began to be more directly involved in the actual buying decisions. Category management comes into play once organizations have fully implemented strategic sourcing practices and are looking beyond cost savings and onto creating value. In the category management era, we see organizations with their spend fully under management and a sourcing expert assigned each critical marketing category. These experts have developed deep relationships with the suppliers, critical to their organization and department goals, and that have helped them develop competitive advantages. The true best-in-class, those organizations like Apple, they have the next level supply chain group and are operating in what we call change management. Change management features sourcing and supply chain groups that are operating strategically rather than tactically. They're not forced to wait to be consulted on a purchase to then implement a sourcing strategy. They are actively involved in the company's decision-making process, and the goals of the supply chain are centric to the goals of the organization. By progressing to a more advanced stage in supply chain and driving towards category management, we transition from being tactical in our strategy to being more proactive. We want to take our methodology for sourcing and make it more revenue focused, because sourcing is not a one-size-fits-all solution. We need to work with not just purchasing, but other people in an organization, like category experts. Lastly, while our goal is cost reduction, we're looking to create value in the supply chain. The success of the sourcing and supply chain group relies on internal buy-in from stakeholders. There will be cases where you will face resistance and objections from team members, and it's important to be able to address these scenarios. Let's look at some of the objections that we commonly face and how we overcome these challenges. So some of the objections that we've heard are, I don't have time for this, I'll get back to you. We're already doing that. Why do I need your help? I've been doing this for 18 years. We have a special relationship with our suppliers. We've already tried that and it didn't work. Based on those internal objections, we find that there's a fear and unwillingness to change, that there's potential sacrifices to quality or service. There may be other responsibilities that are taking precedence over sourcing responsibilities. There could be supplier relationships, loss of control, or implications to their job performance. Here it's important to explain your role and the stakeholder's role in the sourcing process. Emphasize that the process is a collaborative effort and that engaging the stakeholders throughout the process will most likely produce results. Sometimes these fears can manifest themselves as the sourcing initiative goes forward, like standard operating procedures aren't followed because they're not understood and the purpose isn't clear. Sourcing and supply chain avoidance. Sourcing and supply chain may not be trusted or seen as effective resources for this. There may be concerns over suppliers, products, and quality of service. And in some cases, internal stakeholders feel like the sourcing and supply chain group can't work with them to meet their specific deadlines, so projects are stalled or killed. And that concludes part 1 of Marketing Procurement's Value Internally. Once again, I'm Lindsey Fandozzi from Source One Management Services. Thank you for watching, and please join us for